Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll be showing you how to make this tear dress. It's a button down tear dress with a collar. um it's very free, it's an easy dress, it's two-step tear dress. So I'll be showing you how to make it step by step. So if you're interested in knowing how I made this, please keep watching. So I told you that it has two tiers, like two steps. So it has three parts. So we have the first part, which is the bodies, all right, and the second part, which should be gathered on the bodies, and then the third part, which should be gathered on the second part. So now I'm going to get the first part, which is the bodies. So I'm just marking my starting point line there, which will serve as my shoulder line. Then I'm going to get my bust point. All right, so my bust point is 10 inches and I added half inch to it to make it 10.5. The half inch is for seam allowance because I'll be using it to gather gather the second part to it. So the half inch is seam allowance, so I marked 10.5 inches there. Now I'm going to get my neck width and my neck depth. Remember, I'm sorry, we are cutting the back piece first. I told you that it's a button down dress, so the button should have a button, but we are going to be cutting the back first and then use the back as a guide to cut the front. So I marked a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 1 inch for the back. All right, remember the bag is not supposed to be deep. Then the shoulder, my shoulder is 7 and I marked 7.5. The half inch is for seam allowance. Then on that area I'm going to come down by 1 inch. This is my shoulder slant or shoulder swoop. Then I'll connect it to my neck like this. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, from that my shoulder swoop, I'm going to get my bust line. All right, so my bust line is 8 inches. Okay, so this is eventually be where I would impute my bust circumference. So I'm just marking that 7 inches shoulder measurement I got. So I create a straight line that will enable me create my armhole curve right there. So here is my bust point line there. So now I'm going to get my bust circumference. So you measure round of your bust and get a quarter of your bust circumference. All right, so I got a quarter of my bust circumference. Mine is 8 inches and I added 1 inch ease allowance and then 1.5 inch seam allowance. So the ease allowance is because this is a free dress, you don't want it to be tight on the armhole area or your bust area. Okay, so 1 inch ease and 1.5 inch seam allowance. Then I connected it and then I drew my shoulder, my armhole curve. Then on my shoulder line I marked half inch up. This is for seam allowance to be able to join my shoulders. Okay, half inch seam allowance on my shoulder line for joining my shoulders. Now I'm going to cut this off. This is basically the main thing you'll be needing, your bodies, because the other two parts you just gather them on each other. The second part, that is the first one, you gather to your bodies, and the down part you gather to the second part. All right, so here's what I have now, and this is the back. Remember, I'm going to use this to cut the front, so I'm just going to place it on another folded fabric like this and I'll cut the front. So on the part that is on folds, I'm going to make sure I have 3 inches there, and this 3 inches is for my button allowance. So make sure that you have 3 inches on the folded area for your button allowance. So I'm just measuring or making sure that I have 3 inches from the top to the bottom part. Okay, so you're just going to just cut basically this. The only difference is the button allowance that you have there, and then the neck depth is going to be deeper, right? So I'm just going to cut this out exactly as the back, but the thing is I'm going to alter the neck of the front. The neck depth of the back, remember, is 1 inch, but the neck depth of the front, I'm going to make it 2.5, or you can do yours 3 inches. All right, so I'm just going to, the neck width remains the same, so I'm marking the neck width of the front, of the back to the front, so I can create the neck depth of the front like this. Okay, so you can choose to mark 2.5 or 3 inches for your neck depth, is optional. So I marked my neck for the front, and then I'm just going to cut it out. So now I'll slash open this part that is on fold, the button allowance area. So now I have one piece for the back, and I have two pieces for the front. Now I'm just trying to create a notch for my button allowance, so I know where my button allowance stops, so I know where I'll stop when folding. I'll create a notch on the top part and on the bottom part. So I have the back, which is one piece now here, and then I have the front, which is two piece. So when I eventually fold the button allowance in like this, it's going to create a overlap. So the next thing is to get the second part, which will be gathered on the body. So how to determine how much fabric you need to gather on these bodies, you're going to take the measurements of your bodies, the round circumference, that's the bust area, right? So I'm just going to do it now before even joining, so just keep watching. So now I have the back piece, so I'm just going to measure the back piece like this. You remember we added 1.5 inch seam allowance for this, so I'm just going to mark my 1.5 inch seam allowance. I'm not going to include it because we'll eventually sew the sides. So mark the 1.5 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to, from that place I'm at, I'm going to measure what is left, right? So I have 9 inches left. That means I have 9 inches for the back, which is on fold. And if I open it up, it's going to be 18, because 9 times 2 is 18, right? Therefore, I have 18 for the back and for the front, right? I'm not adding the button allowance side. I'm removing the button allowance. That means I also do the same thing for the front. I removed 1.5 inch and then removed the button allowance, and I marked what I have, which is 9 inches. So I have 9 for the front, 9 for the back on fold, which is 18 for both of them, which is 36. So to get the number of fabric or quantity of fabric to gather on it, you're going to multiply 32 inches by 2. So 32 inches 36, because 18 plus 18 is 36. 36 times 2 is going to give me 72. So I'm going to cut out a long strip of fabric that is measuring 72 inches out. I will slightly gather on the around the bodies, right? And then the length of this is going to be about 18 inches, right? Because my full length is actually 38 inches. That's where how long I want it. So I have 10 inches for the bodies, 18 inches for the middle part, and 10 inches for the down part, which will give me 38 inches. This is without the joining allowances. So now I've cut out a long fabric that is measuring 72 inches, right? Which I'll gather on the bodies. Okay, it's 72 inches by length, and now the length, is 72 inches, yes, long, that I'll gather, right? I don't know if you understand. I hope you do. Then the length of this, like I said, is 18. Okay, I've also cut out the down part. Now to cut out the down part, you need to measure 36 times 3, because the last part should be longer than the second part. So for this part now is 36 times 2, the other part is 36 times 3, right? So I have 18 inches for this, and I added 1 inch to it to make it 19, because I'll be joining with half to the upper part and with half to the down part. So 1 inch is for seam allowance, right? Then for this one, like I said, to determine the number of or quantity of fabric you need to gather it to the second part, that's the third tier, you multiply 36, that is the circumference of your bodice, by 3, right? Okay, so I cut it out already, and this is a long strip of the figure I got, and then it wasn't enough. I had to cut an extra, which I'll be joining to make it complete. So for this, the length, I told you that I wanted it to be 10 inches. So but I added 1 inch for folding the hem, and then ½ inch for joining it to the second tier, right? So because I have a selvage, I'm just going to fold once by 1 inch, and by the time I fold it in, I'm going to have 9, yeah, I'm going to have 10.5 inches. So the ½ inches left is to join it to the second tier. All right, I hope you understand what I mean. So this is how you get the number of fabric to cut for the first tier and the second tier. Okay, and then you can make your tier equal. I choose to make the second, that's the first tier, longer. It is optional. So start to join this. Now I'm going to first join my shoulders. Okay, join your shoulders first. Then after joining your shoulders, you're not going to fold the button allowance yet until you're done attaching the tier. That is the first and the second tier. So how to do this is you're going to join place the front part of this one, because you'll be gathering it sparingly. Yes, the gather should be very scanty. Yes, it's supposed to be very scanty. So but the thing is, when you're gathering, you're not going to gather on the button allowance. All right, remember we left 3 inches for the button allowance, and I made a notch. So you just sew straight on the button allowance. You're not going to gather on that side. Okay, you will just start your gathering after the notch, after your button allowance. This is because you still be folding your button allowance, and you don't want it to be rumpled, or you don't want it to be gathered. You want your button allowance to be flat. All right, so you won't be gathering on the button allowance. Just sew it straight, and then you just continue from after the 3 inches, that's after the button allowance, and just gather it round. This is after you must have joined your bodies. Okay, so that after you would fold your button allowance, and it's going to come out neat and straight, and just without rumples and without the gathers. So I'm just going to go to my machine, and I'm going to join the shoulder of my bodice, join the sides by 1.5 inch. Then I'll gather the first and the second tier on each other, and then to my bodice, right? Remember, you also gather the last tier on the first tier, that's the second tier on the first tier, and you would apply the same method. Do not gather on the button allowance. I already made a notch right now, so that I will know where I'm going to start gathering. Okay, so I'll take to my sewing machine and just couple up the bodies and do the gathering and everything. Okay, just gather the tiers to the bodies, and then I'll show you what next too. So for the sleeve is just, I'm just going to cut kind of a basic sleeve, a really little puffy sleeve. You know, the sleeve is optional. You can do whatever sleeve you want. I'm just trying to manage my fabric here. I was just trying to get an equal length here, dividing it into 2 so that I would cut my basic sleeve. So I'm just using my free hand to cut the normal sleeve here, and I'm going to be giving it a little bit of puff. I won't attach an elastic, but I'm going to cut out a band instead for it. So I'm going to use this first one I already cut the second sleeve. So choose whichever sleeve you want. It's optional. I choose to go with this sleeve because it's really small, and I was trying to manage my fabric. I didn't have a lot of fabric. So now I'm going to cut out the band, which I'll gather the sleeve on. So I'll measure my biceps, that is my round arm. Okay, and then I'm going to cut out strip of fabric that is measuring 4 inches by height, which once I fold it into two, it's going to be 2 inches, and then I'm going to place it, and after I fold it to be 2, and then I'll gather the sleeve slightly on it. I'm going to measure my arm so that I'll cut out the exact measurement I need. Remember to add your allowance, ease and seam allowance, because it's not supposed to be tight. So I'll cut out 2 of it. You can choose to use your elastic for this, but I don't want to use an elastic, that's why I'm cutting out a band for it. So by the time I fold it into 2, it's going to be 2 inches, and then I'll gather my sleeve on it. I also have a little bit of gather at the top part. Okay, so I'll cut another piece because it's supposed to be 2 for each of my sleeves. So I have 2 sleeves now. Just notch the middle of my sleeve. Okay, so this one I'll use it for my collar, but that'll be later. So right now I've joined the sides, joined the shoulders of my bodies. Now I'm going to be gathering the first tier on it. Remember what I said, you don't have to gather on the button allowance. So I'll just run a gather stitch like we usually do, and then gather it on the bodies. I'll also gather the second tier on the first tier. All right, and I'll be back. I've done that. As you can see, the gathers are really scanty. Yeah, they're not supposed to be too full. So I've gathered everything. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to fold my button allowance to create my button stand or button overlap. So I'll fold it like this all the way down. It's a button down dress. All right, so I'll just do that, and then the next thing is I've already hemmed the down part. I've folded my button allowance, and I've already attached my sleeves. As you can see, there's a little bit of gather up there, and everything is looking nice. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach my collar. I'm going to be measuring the round neck to cut my collar. So I'm not going to be putting it down here because this video is going to be too long if I do that, but I have a full video where I taught how to cut a collar like this. Very beautiful, nice and simple, very beginner friendly. So I'm going to leave the link on my description or up here, so you just find it. So please go and watch it. Please go and watch it. It's very easy to understand. I'll go ahead and attach my collar, and then I'll create my button holes and fix my buttons. As you can see, I've attached my collar and it's looking very nice and neat. I'll now go and create my buttonholes and fix my buttons. All right, so guys, if you found this video helpful, please click the like button, please and please. It helps me so that more people can also see this. And please subscribe to my channel, and if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next one.